Clara Whitmore slammed the parlor door so hard the portraits rattled on the walls. Her boots were still muddy from the orphanage road, her bonnet half loosed, her breath coming quick. 3 of her sisters stood frozen before the tallest man in all of Virginia. Sebastian Thornfield turned, one dark eyebrow lifted. Clara planted her feet between him and her sisters, chin up, voice loud enough for every servant in the house to hear. "Mr. Thornfield, I will not be sold. Not for your gold, not for your name, not to save this family from itself. If this story speaks to your heart, please subscribe to the channel and stay with me to the very last word. Drop the name of your city in the comments below so I can see how far my story has traveled across this land." Now, Richmond, Virginia. The summer of 1815, where a woman's courage was about to shake a man who believed he could buy anything he wanted. The parlor went so still, Clara could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hall beyond. Sebastian Thornfield did not flinch. He did not smile. He studied Clara the way a man studies a horse that has not been broke yet, measuring it, respecting it, and deciding whether to pay the price. "And you are?" "Clara Whitmore, youngest of 4. "Ah." He inclined his head the smallest degree. "The one who was not here. The one who refused to come." Lydia's hand flew to her mouth. Harriet's face drained white as chalk. Josephine soft still. Josephine, the one who'd always been too gentle for this world, clutched the edge of the pianoforte as though the floor beneath her had gone to water. "Clara." Lydia's whisper cracked straight down the middle. "Hush now. For the love of mercy, hush." "I will not hush, Lydia." "Child!" The word came from the doorway, wet with fury and tears at once. Abigail Whitmore swept in, her cap knocked sideways, her mouth working to find a word that would not come. "Child, in the name of heaven, what have you done?" "I have come home, Mama. That is all." "You are late." "I am here." "You are dressed like a stableman's daughter." "I am dressed like a woman who works." Abigail's breath hitched. Her eyes darted to Thornfield, wide with apology, wild with terror. "Sir, forgive her. She is young. She does not—" "She is plain spoken," Thornfield said. His voice had not risen. It had not fallen. It had gone still. "I have heard more honest words in the last minute than in my last 6 years. Do not apologize for her, ma'am." "Sir, Let her speak." Abigail closed her mouth. "Miss Whitmore." Thornfield turned the whole of his attention to Clara, and Clara felt the weight of it like a hand set upon her shoulder. "You believe I came here to buy a wife. I believe, sir, that you have come to this house to purchase whichever daughter you find the least troublesome, and I will not have it." "What will you have then?" "I will have you leave." "Clara!" Abigail gasped. "And take your carriage and your coat and your gold with you, sir. We are not for sale." "Clara, we are not." Harriet's voice, when it came, was so thin it hardly reached the curtains. "Clara, please." "Harriet, hush." "I said yes, Clara." Clara turned. Harriet had gone whiter still, and her eyes were on the floor, but her chin was up, and there was something in her face Clara did not recognize, a courage that looked too much like surrender to bear. "What?" "I said yes. I was going to say yes." Harriet. "Before you came crashing through the door, I was going to say yes. You will not." "I will." "Harriet, you have never even left the parish." "Which is exactly why." Lydia put her hand on Harriet's arm, a silent, desperate grip, but Harriet did not take her eyes from Clara. "I am 28, Clara. Do you understand that 28? I have had 3 seasons. I have had no proposals. Not one. Not a farmer's second son. Not a widower with 6 children. Not one. And you come striding in here in your orphanage mud and tell me I may not have the first and only offer of my life." "Harriet, it is not an offer. It is mine, Clara, and you will not take it from me." Clara's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Thornfield watched the whole exchange without once moving his head. "Miss Harriet," he said quietly. Harriet turned to him. Her hands were trembling so plainly that the lace at her wrists shook. "Sir, I am grateful for your courage. I mean that. Thank you, sir. But before you commit yourself, I would ask your sister a question if she will allow it." "Sir." Harriet's voice was very small. "Sir," she has said. "A question, Miss Harriet. That is all." Clara's heart was knocking so hard against her ribs, she thought it must be audible across the room. "Ask it." "Miss Clara." Thornfield folded his gloves across his palm. "Why did you come home late?" The question was so unexpected, she could not find it in her mouth for a moment. Your mother sent word to you 3 days ago. Or so I was given to understand. You were informed I was coming. You chose not to be here. Why? That is not. Humor me." Clara drew a breath. "Another. Because I did not wish to be lined up like tin soldiers for your inspection." "And yet you came." "I came for my sisters." "Ah. I came because I heard Elias on the road saying which carriage had stopped at the gate, and I heard the name Thornfield, and I knew. I knew what my mother had done." "What had she done?" "She had put them in a room with you, sir, and she had told you to pick." "She had. And that is not a thing a mother does to her daughters. Not in any house I was raised in." Thornfield said nothing for a long moment. "Miss Clara." He tilted his head. "You are under a misapprehension." "Sir, your mother did not invite me here to inspect her daughters. I asked to meet them." "Sir, it was my request." "Then the shame is yours, sir, not hers." "Agreed." Abigail Whitmore made a small sound halfway between a sob and a hope. "Miss Clara, would you hear the rest of what I came to say?" "I would not. Even if it concerned your father." The parlor went so still, Clara could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hall beyond, ticking and ticking, and she felt the blood drain out of her face as though someone had pulled a plug. "My father is dead, sir." Thornfield looked at Abigail. Abigail looked at the carpet. "Mama." Abigail did not lift her head. "Mama, my father is dead, is he not?" "Clara." Abigail's voice cracked. "Clara, come sit down. Tell me he is dead, Mama. Clara, come sit. Tell me, Mama." Silence. Thornfield cleared his throat. "Perhaps, ma'am, I had best withdraw while—" "No, sir." Clara did not turn. She kept her eyes on her mother. "You stay. You stay right there. Whatever lie you have come to bargain in, you stay and watch it told." Abigail sank into the chair behind her. "Clara, your father he is alive. He is in Baltimore." "Baltimore. In—" Abigail's breath broke. "In the debtor's jail." The word went through Clara like a rifle shot. "In Mama." 3 years, Clara. He has been there 3 years. You told me he was dead. I told you what I could bear to tell. You told us all he was dead. I told you he was gone, child. Gone. You assumed the rest, and I could not. I could not. 3 years. 3 years we have mourned him. We have worn black. We have Lydia." Lydia's head was bowed. "Lydia, did you know?" Lydia did not answer. "Lydia." "I knew," Lydia whispered. "You knew. Mama told me last winter, when the second note came due." "When the second note came due to whom?" Lydia lifted her eyes, and they were full of a terrible old tiredness. "To Mr. Thornfield." Clara turned, very slowly. Sebastian Thornfield was still standing precisely where he had been standing, his gloves still folded in his palm, his face grave and unreadable. "You," Clara said. "I hold the notes on Whitmore Hall, yes. You hold, and on your father's liberty. You." "I did not seek them, Miss Clara. They came to me through a bank in Philadelphia that failed. I bought the paper of it at auction. I did not know whose debts they were until the ink was dry. And you came here today to collect. I came here today to propose an arrangement by which no one should be collected from. A marriage? A marriage. Yes. You would buy a daughter, and in return you would free your father, retire the mortgage, settle an annuity upon your mother and your remaining sisters for the whole of their lives. Clara's knees nearly went. She did not let them. And which daughter did you want, sir? Any. Any. It was not a matter to me of preference. I have no preference. I am a man who requires a wife and an heir, and I thought it a decency to let the choice rest in this house, not in mine. A decency. Yes. A decency. Yes. Sir. Clara's voice had gone low and raw. A decency would have been to walk into this house and ask my mother how much she owed and forgive it. A decency would have been to write to a magistrate on my father's behalf without a price. A decency would have been, charity, Miss Clara, not decency. You are describing charity. Then charity, sir. I am not in the business of charity. Then what are you in the business of, sir? Of survival. The word hung between them. I did not come to this house, Miss Clara, to wound anyone. I came because a man in my position requires a wife, and a household in yours requires a lifeline. It seemed to me that one transaction might answer both. We are not a transaction. No, you are not. But the paper in my vault is. Clara took one step toward him. She did not know she was going to take it until her foot had moved. Take the paper out of your vault, sir, tear it up, and then we will speak of transactions. Clara, Abigail cried. No, Mama, no. He holds us by the throat and calls it a proposal. That is not a proposal. That is a ransom. Miss Clara. Thornfield's voice was steady. If I tear that paper today, your father walks out of jail by Michaelmas. Your mother keeps her house. Your sisters keep their name. And I ride home with nothing but my horse and a reputation for being the greatest fool in Virginia. Then be a fool, sir. I cannot. Then be a coward, sir. A muscle jumped at the corner of his jaw. He did not answer. Clara, for the love of heaven. No, Mama. Clara. Mama, you lied to me. You lied to all of us. You wore black in this house for a man who is alive. You buried him in the parish book with an empty coffin. And you did it because you were too ashamed to tell us the truth, and now you would trade one of us to keep the shame buried. Is that not so, Mama? Is that not the whole of it? Abigail wept openly now. It is, Clara. God forgive me, it is. Clara turned back to Thornfield. I will not marry you, sir. Miss Clara. I will not. Consider. I have considered. In the 8 seconds you took to lay it out, I have considered. I will not be bought. I will not be traded. I will not wake in your house every morning and know that the ring on my hand is the price of my father's bread. I will not. Not for him. Not for my mother. Not for these sisters who would let me. I will not. Miss Clara. Ride home, sir. Be the greatest fool in Virginia. It will be the making of you. She turned. She walked to the parlor door. She put her hand on the knob. Miss Clara. She did not turn. I will wait 1 week. She did not turn. 1 week, Miss Clara. Then I file the notes. She did not turn. She walked down the long hall, and she walked out the front door, and she walked down the lane without her cloak, and without her bonnet, and without a single tear upon her face, because the tears were waiting behind her ribs, and she would not give them to the road. By the time she reached the Paulson orphanage on Franklin Street, her throat was raw from not crying. Miss Prudence Abernathy was at the door. Miss Prudence was always at the door. Clara Whitmore, you walked here. I did. In this heat. I did. Without a bonnet. Yes, ma'am. Come inside. Ruth has been asking for you since breakfast. Miss Prudence. Inside, child. Clara went inside. Miss Prudence was a woman of 60 summers, and no patience for grief that had not been sat with quietly first. She put Clara in the back kitchen, poured her a cup of water from the pitcher, and sat across the table. Tell me. Miss Prudence, my father is alive. Miss Prudence did not move her face. Miss Prudence, he is in Baltimore. In jail. For debt. My mother has known for 3 years, and she has told me he was dead." Miss Prudence did not move her face. "Miss Prudence, say something." "What shall I say, Clara?" "Say that my mother is a wicked woman." "She is not a wicked woman. She lied to me. She is a frightened woman. And fear tells more lies in this country than wickedness has breath for. You know that, Clara. You have sat in this kitchen with little girls whose mothers sold them for a loaf of bread and called it Providence. You know fear." Clara said nothing. "And the rest of it. A man came to the house. A man. Mr. Sebastian Thornfield." Miss Prudence's eyebrows lifted the smallest degree. "The Thornfield." "Yes." "Of Thornfield Reach." "Yes." "Ah." "He holds the paper on the house. And on my father." "Ah." "And he has offered a marriage. To any of us. Any. He said the word 3 times. Any. As though we were to be drawn from a hat." Miss Prudence set her palms flat on the kitchen table. It was a thing she did when she was thinking hard. Clara had seen her do it over cholera outbreaks, and over runaway girls, and over the winter the wood ran out, and 3 babies died before March. "Clara." "Yes, ma'am." "Which of you did he choose?" "He chose none. That was the insult." "He chose you." Clara looked up. "What?" "Child, listen to the words again. He stood in that parlor with your 3 sisters before him, and he said any. Then you walked in, and I will wager a silver dollar. He looked at you and did not say another word until you had done speaking. He asked my name. Of course he did. Miss Prudence, he chose you the minute you came through that door, Clara Whitmore. Any was a coward's word, a man's who did not want to own what he was doing. And the moment you named the cowardice for him, he went still, did he not?" Clara's hands had begun to shake. He said he would wait a week." "A week before what?" "Before he files the notes." "Against the house." "And against my father." Miss Prudence sat back. "Clara." "Yes, ma'am. A man who gives a woman a week has not come to collect. He has come to court. He has come to extort Miss Prudence. He has come doing both at once. Men in that position often do. But a man who comes only to extort does not give a week. He gives a day. He gives an hour. He gives until nightfall. A man who gives a week is a man who wants to be refused and wooed at once and does not know how to ask for the second straight. Miss Prudence, I will not marry him. I did not say you would, child. I said he chose." Little Ruth appeared in the kitchen doorway, her apron smudged with flour, her eyes round. "Miss Clara?" Clara wiped her face fast. "Ruth, honey." "Miss Clara, there is a man at the front gate asking for you." "A man?" "A tall man, with a black horse. He says his name is Mr. Thornfield, and he is very sorry to disturb you, but he must speak with you before he rides back to the Reach." Clara stood. Her chair scraped back across the boards. Miss Prudence rose as well, slower, steadier. "Ruth, go and tell Mr. Thornfield that Miss Whitmore will be with him directly." "Yes, Miss Prudence." Ruth was gone. "Clara." "I am going to send him away." "You are going to hear him out." "Miss Prudence, you are going to hear him out, and you are going to stand straight while you do it, and you are going to remember that you are a woman in her own shoes, on her own ground, and you are not for sale. And when you have heard him, you will decide what you wish to do. Not what your mother wishes, not what your sisters wish, not what I wish. What you wish." "Miss Prudence, I do not know what I wish." "Then tell him that." Clara walked to the front of the orphanage. Sebastian Thornfield was standing just beyond the gate, his hat in his hand, his horse's reins loose in the other. He had not tied the horse. He had meant to be brief. Clara stopped 3 paces from the gate. "Mr. Thornfield." "Miss Whitmore." "Say what you came to say." "I came to say one thing, and then I will ride." "Say it." "I withdraw the offer to your sisters." Clara's throat closed. "Sir, I withdraw it. All 3. None of them shall be asked. None of them shall be considered. Not Miss Lydia, not Miss Harriet, not Miss Josephine. Whatever comes of this, it will not come by way of them. And my father? Your father walks out of jail by Michaelmas regardless. Regardless. Regardless of what you say to me in the next 7 days. That part is done. I wrote the letter to the magistrate from the parlor of your mother's house, and I posted it in my own hand from the crossroads not 20 minutes past. The mortgage on Whitmore Hall, I will hold until year's end, and then I will forgive it. That part is also done. Your mother has been told. Mr. Thornfield, I did not make the Whitmores those promises, Miss Clara. I make them to you. To me. To you. Why? Because I cannot do it otherwise. Because I looked at what I did in that room through your eyes, and I would not do it again for all the wheat in Richmond County. Because I will not be the man your mother begged to. Sir, I withdraw the offer to your sisters. The rest— He looked down at his hat a moment. The rest is mine to bear. If you wish me to come again, send word to Thornfield Reach, and I will come directly on any day in any weather. If you do not wish it, I shall not trouble you, nor your family, nor this place, ever again. The week I spoke of in your mother's parlor is not a week for the notes. It is a week for you, Miss Clara, and for whatever you wish to say or not say in it. He set his hat upon his head. He turned to his horse. Mr. Thornfield. He turned back. Why? He looked at her for a long moment. Because, he said, you were right. He mounted. He rode. Clara stood at the gate of the orphanage, with the dust of his horse settling on her boots, and she understood slowly with the terrible clarity of a woman who has just been given a thing she did not ask for and cannot refuse. That the week he had spoken of in her mother's parlor was no longer a ransom. It was a question, and it was hers, and hers alone to answer. Clara did not go home at first. She stood at the orphanage gate until the dust had settled, until Miss Prudence's hand came to rest on her shoulder, until Ruth came and slid her small fingers into Clara's palm, and said nothing at all. A child of 7 does not need to ask a grown woman why she is crying in the yard. A child of 7 has seen it before. Miss Clara? Ruth, honey. Are you going to marry the tall man? I do not know Ruth. Miss Prudence says a woman ought not to marry a man she does not know. Miss Prudence is right. Miss Prudence also says a woman ought not to refuse a man she has not asked a single question of. Clara looked down. Ruth was looking up at her with the grave, unblinking seriousness of a child repeating what she has overheard through a door. Miss Prudence said that, did she? Just now, in the kitchen, to the cat. To the cat. Yes, ma'am. Clara laughed. It came out cracked and surprised and half a sob. But it was a laugh, and it was the first sound she had made since walking out of her mother's parlor that did not taste like iron. Ruth, you run along inside. I am going home. Will you come tomorrow? I will come tomorrow. Promise. I promise. Clara started down Franklin Street. She had not gone 20 paces before she heard the hoofbeats behind her, and for one foolish leaping instant her heart said Thornfield, and then she turned and saw it was only Jessie, her mother's stable hand on the gray mare, his hat jammed low against the sun. Miss Clara. Jessie. Miss Clara, your ma wants you home directly. She says directly, miss. Miss Harriet has took to her room and will not come out, and Miss Josephine is in a state, and your ma says— Jessie? Ma'am, I am walking. Yes, ma'am. I am walking, and I will be home when I am home. Yes, ma'am. Ride ahead and tell her. Yes, ma'am. He did not ride ahead. He turned the mare and walked her at Clara's shoulder all the way down Franklin Street to the turning for Whitmore Hall. And Clara did not tell him to leave, because she knew her mother had told him not to leave her alone on the road, and because for all the anger in her chest, she was not too proud to be glad of a silent man riding beside her, in a town that had just that morning learned the name of every Whitmore debt. By the time the chimneys of the hall came into view through the chestnut trees, Clara had put her shoulders back twice, and let them fall twice, and she did not know which of those was her honest answer. Harriet was on the front step. She was not waiting politely. She was waiting the way a woman waits when she has rehearsed every word in her mouth so many times the words have gone metallic. Clara Whitmore. Harriet. Come inside. I am coming. No! Here! Out here! Before you go one step into that house. Harriet. He has withdrawn his offer from the three of us. I know. Mama had a note from his hand, not 1/4 hour past. She read it out to us at the dining room table as though it were a verdict in a trial. Harriet, sit down. I will not sit down. Harriet, do you know what you have done? He did what he did of his own will, Harriet. He did it because of you. He did it because it was the right thing. He did it because of you, Clara. Do not stand there in your orphanage boots and tell me he did it because it was right. A man does not withdraw an offer of marriage from 3 women because of right. He withdraws it because one of those women has gotten inside his ribs and he cannot get her out again, and the other 3 have become invisible to him. That is why. Harriet, you cannot know that. I can. I am 28, and I have sat through every ball in this county for 10 years, and I know what it looks like when a man has stopped seeing 3 women and started seeing 1. Harriet. And I hate you for it, Clara. Do you understand me? I hate you. Not today. Today I am only shaking. But tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, I am going to hate you, and I would rather tell you now to your face than have you find it out the slow way. Clara's mouth went dry. Harriet, I did not want him. I know you did not want him. That is what makes it unbearable. Harriet. Do you think I'm a fool, Clara? I watched him in that parlor. I watched him look at the 3 of us as though we were 3 hats in a milliner's window, and I made my peace with it in the space of a minute, because I had made my peace with worse things long before he ever walked in. And then you came crashing through the door in your work dress, and he saw you, and the whole room changed shape, and he did not know it, and you did not know it, and I was the only one in the house with eyes that saw. Harriet, hush. I will not hush. Not today. Harriet. I was going to be a Duchess Clara. You were going to be a wife. I was going to be chosen. The word came out so raw that Clara nearly took a step back. Harriet. I have never in my life been chosen. Harriet. Not by Papa, who sent you to school in Philadelphia because you were the clever one. Not by Mama, who put Josephine in the front pew every Sunday because Josephine was the pretty one. Not by Lydia, who runs the house as though I am a guest in it. Not by one man at one ball in one summer of 10 summers. Not ever. Not once. Harriet. Sister. Please. And this morning for 10 minutes I was going to be chosen. And then you walked in, and I was not. Clara reached for her. Harriet stepped back. Do not touch me. Harriet. Do not touch me, Clara. Not today. Go inside. Mama is waiting. And God keep you, because I cannot just now. Harriet turned and walked down the garden path toward the rose arbor, her back very straight, her hands in fists at her sides, and Clara stood on the step and watched her go, and thought, this is the first thing he has cost me, and it will not be the last. She went inside. The front hall smelled of lavender water, which meant Lydia had been in it because Lydia cleaned when Lydia was frightened. Clara could hear her mother's voice through the study door, low, pleading, talking to someone in the tone she used when she was owing an apology and could not find a way to put it. Clara did not stop at the study. She went up the stairs. Josephine's door was ajar. Joe. Clara. Josephine was at the window. She had not turned when Clara came in. Her hair was down. Josephine never wore her hair down past 9 of the morning. Joe. Look at me. Clara. I have to tell you something. Joe, come sit. Clara. I have to tell you something. And if I do not tell you now, I will not tell you at all. And if I do not tell you at all, I am going to do a thing I cannot undo. Clara stopped halfway across the room. Joe. Josephine turned. Her face was wet. Clara? Tell me. I am going to Philadelphia tonight. What? On the mail coach, 10 o'clock. It stops at the Red Stag. Joe, what are you? There is a man, Clara. Clara sat down on the edge of the bed. Oh, Joe. His name is Elias Rutledge. He is a physician. He was Mama's doctor when she had the fever last winter, and we walked in the garden when she was sleeping, and we, Clara, we did not mean anything. We did not. And then it meant everything. Joe, why have you said nothing? Because he has no money, Clara. He has a practice that will not earn him $100 this year, and Mama has said in every parlor in Richmond that no daughter of hers will marry a man without a name. And I am the pretty one, Clara. I am the one she has banked on, the one she has held in reserve for a proposal that would fix everything. Do you know how that feels, to be held in reserve? Joe, so I said nothing, and I let her parade me for Mr. Thornfield this morning like a prize calf, and Elias heard of it from his uncle at the apothecary, and Elias has written me 3 letters since sunrise, and he has asked me to come to Philadelphia, where his cousin has a house, and he has said he will marry me on the steps of the courthouse in the morning if I will come tonight. Joe, you cannot. Clara, you have just told a man with $10,000 a year to ride home without you. You have just told Mama that the Whitmores are not for sale. You have just torn down the whole plan this family has been building for a year because you could not abide the shape of it. Joe, do not tell me I cannot go to Philadelphia. Clara was silent. You cannot use my own mourning against me, Josephine. I am not using it against you. I am using it for me. Joe, Clara, look at me. Look at my face. I am 22 years old, and I have never once in my life said the word I want. Not once. Not out loud. Not to Mama. Not to Papa when he was still here. Not to you. Not to Lydia. I have been the pretty one, and I have been the quiet one, and I have been the one who says whatever you think best. Mama, and today this morning, for the first time in my life, I want. I want Elias Rutledge. I want his house in Philadelphia. I want a practice that will not earn $100 this year. And if I do not take it tonight, Mama will marry me in March to whichever old widower she finds next, and I will die a doctor's wife in my own mind, and a stranger's wife in my body, and I will not do it, Clara. I will not. Joe? Say you will not tell Mama. Joe, say it. I will not tell Mama. Say you will help me. Joe. Clara, say it. Clara closed her eyes. I will help you. Josephine's breath came out in a shudder that shook her whole frame. Clara, I will help you. But Joe, listen to me. Listen. If you go tonight and you stand on that courthouse step in the morning and Elias Rutledge does not come, he will come. If he does not come, he will come. Joe, if he does not come, you come home. You come home and you use my name and you walk through that door and you tell Mama you have been at the orphanage with me, and I will swear to it. You will not be ruined. Do you hear me? You will not be ruined if I am standing beside you. Clara. Promise. I promise. Good. Josephine sat down beside her on the bed. They did not speak for a long while. Then Josephine said very softly, He looked at you, you know. Joe, not the way a man looks at a woman. The way a man looks at a door he has been looking for. Joe, please. I am only saying. I have not decided anything, Josephine. I know. I am only saying. A soft knock. Miss Clara? It was Lydia. Yes, Liddy. There is a man at the front door. Clara's blood went cold. Mr. Thornfield. No. A man I do not know. He says his name is Mr. Caleb Prescott. He says he has come on a matter of debt, and he will not wait on the step, and Mama has gone into her dressing room and shut the door and will not come out. Caleb Prescott. He has a ledger, Clara. Clara stood up. Joe, stay here. Do not come down. Do you understand me? Do not come down for anything. Clara, do not come down. Do not. Clara went down the stairs with Lydia behind her, and by the time she reached the hall, her hands had stopped shaking, which was the worst sign of all, because Clara knew from long acquaintance with her own temper that her hands stopped shaking only when a thing had gone past fear into something harder. The man in the front hall was thin and smallish and very neatly dressed. Miss Whitmore. Mr. Prescott. I had hoped to speak with your mother. My mother is indisposed. You may speak with me. Ah, a daughter. A daughter who will not be patronized, sir. What is your business? He opened a small leather ledger. I hold a promissory note in the amount of $1,140 against the estate of Jonas Whitmore dated the 6th of April, 1812, signed in his own hand at the Mercantile Bank of Annapolis. I am here to collect. That is not possible. I beg your pardon. That is not possible, Mr. Prescott. The debts of Jonas Whitmore are held in full by Mr. Sebastian Thornfield of Thornfield Reach. Mr. Thornfield purchased them at auction in the spring when the Philadelphia house failed. There is no separate note. Caleb Prescott smiled a thin, surprised smile. Mr. Thornfield. Yes, sir. Of Thornfield Reach. Yes, sir. Miss Whitmore, that is a curious thing. Why curious, sir? Because I sold him the Philadelphia paper myself from my own desk, and I can tell you with some certainty that the Annapolis note was not in the bundle. The Annapolis note your father signed privately, to me, at my kitchen table in May of 1812. There was no bank involved. It is not a matter of record. Sir, he owed me $1,140 for a parcel of tobacco he could not pay for, and he signed a private note, and I have carried that note for 3 years, and I have come today to collect it. Sir, you cannot simply— Miss Whitmore, I can, and I will. $1,140 or the silver in the dining room sideboard, which I am told is considerable. I am a patient man. I shall wait in the parlor while you consult your mother. You will not wait in my parlor, sir. Miss Whitmore. You will stand in this hall where I can see you, and you will speak to me, and I will tell you now that you will not take one spoon from this house until I have sent word to Thornfield Reach and had the matter confirmed by Mr. Thornfield himself. Mr. Thornfield has no standing in this. Mr. Thornfield has every standing, sir, because Mr. Thornfield holds the mortgage on this house, and by the laws of Virginia, no creditor may strip a mortgaged property of its chattels without the consent of the primary lien holder. You will know that if you are the man of business you claim to be. Caleb Prescott's smile faltered the smallest degree. Miss Whitmore, you are very well read for a country girl. I am not a country girl, sir. I am the daughter of a man you are trying to rob while he sits in a Baltimore jail, and I will not have it in my own hall. Miss Whitmore. Lydia. Yes, Clara. Send Jesse to Thornfield Reach, now, on the fast horse, with a letter. I will write it in 2 minutes. Have him saddled. Yes, Clara. Lydia went. Caleb Prescott stood in the hall with his ledger in his hands, and his thin smile fading by the second. Miss Whitmore, I would advise— Mr. Prescott, I would advise that you sit in that chair until Jesse returns, and you do not move from it, because if you take one step toward the sideboard in my mother's dining room, I will have the constable on you before your boot leaves the rug. Do you understand me, sir? Miss Whitmore. Do you understand me, sir? I understand you. Sit. He sat. Clara walked past him into the study where her mother was hiding, and she opened the door without knocking, and her mother looked up from the escritoire with a face that was not her mother's face. Mama. Clara. Oh, Clara. Mama, listen to me. Clara, that man in the hall. I know, Mama. I am handling it. Listen. Clara, your father never told me about a private note. Mama, listen. Abigail's mouth closed. Mama, I am going to Baltimore. What? I am going to Baltimore tonight, on the post road, with Jesse. Clara, you cannot. Mama, I'm going to see Papa. I'm going to stand in that jail, and I am going to ask him in his own voice how many Caleb Prescotts are going to come through that door in the next month, and how many notes he signed at kitchen tables, and what else in this family has been a lie for the last 3 years. And then I am coming home, and I am going to Thornfield Reach, and I am going to sit in Mr. Thornfield's drawing room, and I am going to tell him what my answer is. Clara, Mama, you do not get to speak now. You have spoken for 3 years. Now I am speaking. Abigail wept into her hands. Clara, Write me the name of the jail, the full name, the full address, the name of the keeper, everything you have been hiding. Write it now." Abigail wrote. She wrote with a hand that shook so hard the nib skipped twice, and when she pushed the paper across the desk, Clara took it and folded it into the pocket of her work dress and did not look her mother in the face. "Mama, one thing more." "Yes." "Harriet is in the garden. When I am gone, you will go out there to her, and you will sit with her on the arbor bench, and you will tell her that she is the finest of your 4 daughters. You will not tell her because I have told you to. You will tell her because it is the truest thing in the world. Do you hear me?" "Clara, do you hear me, Mama?" "I hear you." "Good." Clara went back into the hall. Caleb Prescott was still in the chair. Lydia was standing in the parlor doorway with a sealed letter in her hand. "Jessie is saddled, Clara." "Good. Give me the letter. I will put one line in it. Mr. Prescott, you will pardon me." She crossed to the little writing desk in the hall and uncapped the ink and wrote one line beneath her own earlier words, and she sealed it again with the wax, and she walked to the front door. "Jessie, Miss, ride. Miss, ride hard. Yes, miss." He rode. Clara came back inside and stood in the hall and looked at Caleb Prescott in his little chair with his little ledger, and she felt something come up in her that she had not known was there. A cold, steady, almost cheerful thing, the thing a woman feels when she has at last understood that the only person coming to save her family is herself. "Mr. Prescott?" "Miss Whitmore." "While we wait, sir, you will tell me every detail of that kitchen table meeting with my father in May of 1812. Every detail, the weather, the hour, who else was at the table, what was served, what my father was wearing, every word he spoke." "Miss Whitmore." "Every detail, sir, or I shall conclude that no such meeting took place, and that the note in your ledger is a forgery, and that shall be the letter I send next, not to Thornfield Reach, but to the magistrate of Richmond County. Do we understand one another?" Caleb Prescott's face went a very particular shade of white. "Miss Whitmore." "Every detail. Begin." He began. He spoke for nearly 40 minutes, and by the end of those 40 minutes, his face had gone from white to gray, and his details had begun to contradict themselves, and he had twice said a thing, and then twice taken it back, and Clara was writing down every word on a fresh sheet of paper at her mother's little hall desk, and by the time Jessie came galloping back up the drive with a mud-spattered envelope in his hand, Caleb Prescott had already understood that he was not leaving Whitmore Hall with a single spoon, and possibly not with his liberty. Clara took the envelope. She broke the seal. The hand inside was not Thornfield's steward's, as she had half expected. It was Thornfield's own. "Miss Whitmore. The man Caleb Prescott is known to me. He has attempted this scheme in 3 counties and been stopped in 2. The note he holds, if it exists at all, was discharged by your father at the Annapolis court in the autumn of 1813, and I have the discharge paper in my vault. I am sending my attorney, Mr. Harlan Webb, who is at this moment riding from the Reach with the paper in his satchel. He shall reach you within the hour. Keep Prescott in the hall. Do not let him leave. If he attempts to leave, have Jessie stand in the doorway with the musket from the gun room. The musket is not loaded. It does not need to be. Prescott is a coward, and a coward will sit for an unloaded musket as readily as a loaded one. I am Miss Whitmore, your servant in this matter, and in any other you may require of me. S. Thornfield. Clara folded the letter very slowly. She looked up at Caleb Prescott. Caleb Prescott was watching her face. Whatever he saw in it made him begin slowly to stand. "Sir." Clara's voice was very quiet. "Sit down." "Miss Whitmore." "Sit down, Mr. Prescott. I have urgent business." "Jessie." Jessie came through the front door with mud to his knees. "Miss?" "The gun room. The musket on the wall. Bring it." Jessie's eyes widened only the smallest degree. "Yes, miss." He went. Caleb Prescott sat down. Clara stood in the middle of the hall of Whitmore Hall, with Sebastian Thornfield's letter folded in her hand, and her mother weeping somewhere upstairs, and her sister running away to Philadelphia in 5 hours' time, and her other sister hating her in the garden, and her father in a Baltimore jail, and a thief in her front room, and she understood with a clarity that ran from her boots to her scalp that the week Sebastian Thornfield had given her was not going to be a week of waiting. It was going to be a week of war, and she was going to fight it. Jessie came back with the musket. Clara held the letter up to the lamplight one more time and read very softly the line Thornfield had written at the very bottom of the page under his signature, where she had almost missed it. I am at Thornfield Reach until Sunday. After Sunday, I ride for Baltimore. Clara's hand closed around the paper. Jessie. Miss. Stand in the doorway. Yes, miss. Mr. Prescott. Miss Whitmore. Mr. Harlan Webb is coming from Thornfield Reach with a paper that will prove you a liar. When he arrives, sir, I shall decide whether to hand you to the constable of Richmond County or to let you ride away on the horse you came in on, and the decision, Mr. Prescott, will depend entirely upon the tone in which you speak to me for the next hour. Caleb Prescott's mouth opened. Do not speak yet, sir. I have not finished. He closed his mouth. You will sit in that chair. You will not move. You will not look at the sideboard. You will not look at the silver. You will not look at my sister on the stair. You will look at the rug between your boots. And you will think very carefully about every name of every family you have done this to before ours. And when Mr. Webb arrives, sir, you will give me those names, every one of them, in the order you have harmed them, and for every name you remember, I shall shorten your ride to the constables by 1 hour. Do you understand me, sir? Miss Whitmore, do you understand me? I understand. Begin, sir, while we wait. Caleb Prescott began to speak the names. Clara Whitmore stood in the hall of her mother's house with a musket at the door and a letter in her hand, and the first of the names in her ears, and somewhere in the back of her throat, very quietly. For the first time since she had walked out of the parlor that morning, she said a single word inside her own head, and the word was Sebastian, and she did not know whether she had said it in thanks or in warning, or in a voice she had never before used in her life. She only knew she had said it, and that Sunday was 4 days away. Harlan Webb arrived 42 minutes later on a horse so lathered Jessie had to walk it twice around the barn before it could be stabled. He was a small, neat, gray-haired man in a dark coat, and he carried the satchel in his left hand and his hat in his right, and he did not remove his hat until Clara had opened the door herself. Miss Whitmore. Mr. Webb. I have it. Come in, sir. Mr. Thornfield sends his compliments. He also sends word that if the matter in your hall is not settled within the hour, he will come himself. And I am instructed to tell you that is not a thing he says lightly. The matter will be settled, Mr. Webb. Mr. Prescott has been very forthcoming. Harlan Webb's eyes cut to Caleb Prescott in the chair, and something in his small, neat face flickered very briefly into something that was not small and not neat at all. Has he now? Names, dates, counties. I have written them down. Miss Whitmore. Yes, sir. You are a wonder. I am a woman with a musket at her door, Mr. Webb. That is not the same thing. Harlan Webb laughed once, very dry. Mr. Prescott, stand up. Caleb Prescott stood up. Mr. Prescott, you will recall that we have met before. Mr. Webb. In chambers, in Fredericksburg, in the spring of 1813, when I advised you in the strongest terms that the next time your name crossed my desk, in connection with a forged promissory note, I should make it my life's business to see you hanged. Sir, Do you recall my saying that, Mr. Prescott? I recall. I mention it only because I should hate for you to feel surprised, sir, by what comes next. Caleb Prescott's knees went. He did not quite fall, but he put one hand on the chair back, and the ledger slid out of his fingers and hit the rug with a small flat sound, and Clara watched him steady himself and thought with a surprise that had nothing tender in it. I have ruined a man, and it took me an hour, and I am not sorry. Jessie. Miss. Ride for the constable. Yes, miss. Take Mr. Prescott's horse with you on a lead rein. He will not be needing it. Yes, miss. Jessie took the musket from the doorway, handed it to Lydia, without a word, and was out of the hall before Prescott had closed his mouth. Harlan Webb set his satchel on the little hall desk and opened it. "Miss Whitmore, your father's discharge paper properly witnessed, properly sealed. Also a letter from Mr. Thornfield for your mother, which I am instructed to place into her hand and no other. Also a second letter for you, which I am instructed to place into your hand only, and not to wait for an answer. Into my hand only." His exact words, ma'am. Clara took the letter. She did not open it. She put it into the pocket of her work dress on top of the address of the Baltimore jail, and she kept her face very still. "Mr. Webb, will you take some tea while we wait for the constable?" "I would be obliged, Miss Whitmore." "Lydia will bring it." "Lydia." "Yes, Clara." "Tea for Mr. Webb, not for Mr. Prescott. If Mr. Prescott is thirsty, he will drink from the rain barrel in the yard." "Yes, Clara." Lydia went. Clara stood in the hall with the letter burning a small hot circle against her hip, and she did not read it. The constable of Richmond County arrived 40 minutes after Jessie rode out. He was a broad-shouldered man named Ezekiel Tate, and he listened to Harlan Webb's account, and to Clara's account, and to Caleb Prescott's small collapsed silence, and at the end of it, he put a pair of iron bracelets on Prescott's wrists, and said without looking up, "Miss Whitmore, your father was kind to my own father once in a matter of a foal that died, and I have not forgotten. If there is any further person comes to this door in the next month claiming paper on your family, you send Jessie to me, and I shall ride out within the hour, and there shall be no charge for the service. Mr. Tate." "Ma'am?" "Thank you." "Ma'am." He took Caleb Prescott out by the elbow. Prescott did not look back, and neither did Clara. When the front door had closed, Harlan Webb drained his teacup in one swallow and stood up. "Miss Whitmore." "Mr. Webb?" "I shall ride." "Will you give Mr. Thornfield my answer?" "He instructed me not to wait for an answer, ma'am." "Give it to him anyway." "Ma'am, tell him I shall come to Thornfield Reach on Sunday morning. Tell him I shall not come before. Tell him I have business in Baltimore between now and then, and that I shall require a letter of introduction to the keeper of the jail, which I hope he will be able to provide, and which I shall collect at the Reach on Sunday, and that he is not to meet me upon the road. Tell him those are my terms, Mr. Webb, and if he finds any of them inconvenient, he may meet me at the gate of the Reach at whatever hour on Sunday I choose to present myself, and not before." Harlan Webb's small, neat face did something very like a smile. "Miss Whitmore, I shall repeat every word." "Good." "Good day, ma'am." "Good day, Mr. Webb." He rode. Clara closed the door and leaned her forehead against the cool wood of it for the space of 3 breaths, and then she straightened, and she went upstairs to Josephine's room because it was almost 7 and the post coach for Philadelphia left at 10. Josephine had her small carpetbag packed. "Clara, Joe, is Elias truly a good man?" Josephine turned from the window. "Clara, is he, Joe, in your honest voice, not in the voice you have been using with yourself for 6 months, in your honest voice, sister, is he a good man?" Josephine sat down on the edge of the bed. "He is a shy man, Clara." "Shy is not good. He is a careful man." "Careful is not good, Joe. He is a man who wrote me a letter the day after my mother's fever broke, in which he asked my forgiveness for having held my hand in the garden without asking, and who returned to me the ribbon I had let fall on the gravel path, and who said he had thought of nothing since that morning, but whether he had given offense, and that if he had, he should not call at the house again, and that he hoped I would send him word of my answer by the same child who had fetched the ribbon." Clara was silent. "He is that kind of man, Clara." "Joe." "He is that kind of man, and I am going to marry him tomorrow on the steps of the Philadelphia courthouse, and if I am a fool for it, I should rather be a fool in his parlor for 40 years than a sensible woman in any other man's parlor for 40 minutes. Clara crossed the room, and she took her sister's face in both her hands, and she kissed Josephine once on the forehead, very firm, the way their father used to kiss them on the forehead before bed when they were small. "Go, Joe." "Clara, go now. Take the mare, not the post coach. The post coach can be stopped and searched. The mare cannot. Ride to the Franklin Street orphanage and tell Miss Prudence I sent you, and tell her to put you in the back of the laundry cart that goes north at 9:30, and to pay the driver, and to say nothing to anyone, and I shall pay her back on Sunday. Clara, go, before Mama remembers she is a mother." Josephine went. She went out the back stairs in her second-best traveling cloak, with her carpet bag over her shoulder, and Jessie's saddle on the mare she had never once ridden alone. And Clara stood at the upstairs window and watched her sister turn the mare onto the lane and dig her heels in and ride the way a woman rides, who has at last understood that no one is coming to fetch her. And Clara put her hand flat against the window glass, and she said very softly, "God keep you, Josephine Whitmore." And she went downstairs. Harriet was still in the garden. Clara did not go out to her. She went to the study. Abigail was at the escritoire with her head in her hands, and the letter from Thornfield lay unopened on the blotter beside her. "Mama." Clara. "Read your letter, Mama." "I cannot." "You will." Clara. "I have not the strength." "You will read it, Mama, because in 1 hour I am leaving for Baltimore, and I will not leave this house with an unopened letter sitting on your desk like a grenade. Read it, Mama, now, out loud." Abigail lifted her head. Her face was very old. She opened the letter with hands that shook so hard the seal fell off whole, and she read, and her voice cracked 3 times in the first paragraph, and Clara stood at the study door and did not go to her and did not weep and did not move. "Mama, read it out." Abigail read. "Mrs. Whitmore, your husband is to be released from the debtor's jail at Baltimore on Thursday next at noon, upon presentation of the enclosed discharge to the keeper. I have arranged for a private conveyance to fetch him to Fredericksburg, where he will be lodged at the Golden Plough, until such time as he feels strong enough to ride home to you. I have settled the account at the Plough in advance, and for 6 months beyond, against the possibility that his strength returns slowly. You are not to travel to Fredericksburg yourself until he has sent word. When he has sent word, you will go to him alone, and you will speak to him alone, and you will tell him, Mrs. Whitmore, that his daughters mourned him in black for 3 years, and you will tell him it was your doing, and you will ask his forgiveness, and you will not ask mine. I hold no grievance against you, ma'am. A woman who has been left behind in the state in which he left you behind does what she must to hold a house together, and I have known men who have done worse for less cause. But your daughters are owed the telling, and you are the one who owes it. Do not hide behind my name in it. I remain, ma'am, your servant in every lawful matter, but not in this. S. Thornfield. Abigail put the letter down. She put her face into her hands and she wept, and for a long time Clara did not move from the door. Mama. Clara. I am going to Baltimore tonight. Clara, no. Mama, I am going. I shall ride with Jessie. We shall take the lower road and change horses at Ashland, and we shall be at the jail by Wednesday evening, and I shall see my father on Thursday morning before the keeper lets him out, and I shall hear from his own mouth what has been true in this house for 3 years and what has not. Do you understand me, Mama? Clara. Do you understand me? I understand. Good. Clara. Will you not read me a letter he has sent you? No, Mama. Clara. That letter is mine, Mama, not yours, and I shall read it when I'm ready to read it and not before. Clara turned. She went to the door. Clara? Yes, Mama. Your sister Josephine. Clara stopped. Mama? Your sister Josephine is not in her room. Clara did not turn around. I know, Mama. Clara. She is gone, Mama. She has gone to marry Dr. Elias Rutledge in Philadelphia in the morning, and she has taken the gray mare, and she is not coming back, and you are not to send anyone after her, because if you send a soul after her, Mama, I shall know about it inside of an hour, and you and I will never again sit at the same table in this life. Do you understand me, Mama? Silence. Then very small, I understand you, Clara. Good. Clara. Good night, Mama. Clara left. She rode out of Whitmore Hall at 11:30 that night, with Jessie on his own horse beside her, and her father's pistol in her saddle holster, and the letter from Sebastian Thornfield still unopened in the inside pocket of her riding coat. And she did not look back at the lit window of the parlor where she knew her mother was still weeping, and she did not look back at the dark garden where she knew Harriet had finally gone inside, and she did not look back at Josephine's empty room, and she rode. She did not read the letter until Ashland. They changed horses at the post inn at Ashland at 4 in the morning, and while Jessie saw to the saddles, Clara sat at the one narrow table in the inn's common room, with a tallow candle and a pewter cup of weak cider, and she took the letter out of her coat. She broke the seal. The handwriting was smaller than she had expected, neater, more careful. A man who had written it slowly. Miss Whitmore, there are 3 things I must say to you, and I would rather say them now in writing than leave them for Sunday. The first is that I went to the Baltimore jail 2 weeks ago. I went without your mother's knowledge. I went in the name of a cousin, because I did not wish your father to know who had bought his paper until I had spoken with him. I sat with him for 4 hours on the 2nd Tuesday of this month, and I came away from that room with a clearer picture of the man who sired you than any I have carried of any man in many years. Your father, Miss Whitmore, is a fool. He is also a gentleman, and a soft-hearted one, and an honest one, and I liked him. I tell you this because when you walk into that room and see him, you will be angry, and I would have you know before you walk in that his foolishness has not been wickedness, and that there is a difference, and that I believe your father knows the difference better than most. Clara read the paragraph twice. Her hand had gone cold. The second is that while I was sitting with your father, I saw upon the wall of his cell a small clipping from a Philadelphia periodical pinned there with a bent nail. It was the Carolina Review for the month of last February. The piece was unsigned. It was titled, "A Letter from Franklin Street." It was, as I have since learned from the editor of that periodical, written by a young woman in Richmond who has sent him 11 such pieces over 3 years and who signs herself only C.W. The piece concerned the orphans of the Paulson home on Franklin Street and the laws of Virginia concerning their apprenticeship and what is owed to them by the Commonwealth that pretends to be their father and what is owed to them by the Commonwealth's sons who pretend they do not see them. It was the finest piece of writing I have read in this country in 7 years, Miss Whitmore. I read it in February. I read it again in March. I wrote to the editor in April and offered him a substantial sum for the name of his correspondent, and he, being a man of honor, refused me. I did not know your name then. Your father had not yet told me who his daughters were. I left the jail that evening with a clipping I had begged from him, pinned inside my own coat, and an idea forming in my mind of what I should do next, if ever I could get past your mother's mortgage to the women of your house. It was not any of your daughters I came to Richmond to meet Miss Whitmore. It was from the moment I rode past the Franklin Street orphanage and saw the name upon its gate one particular daughter. I said the word any in your mother's parlor because I am a coward, and because I did not trust my own face, and because I could not think how to ask for the one I had come for without laying bare in front of your 3 sisters and your mother that I had been reading her words for 3 years and had come to Virginia on account of them. I tell you this now, Miss Whitmore, because I cannot ride to Baltimore with the weight of it unspoken, and because I will not have you come to Thornfield Reach on Sunday, believing I chose you in the moment you walked through the parlor door. I had chosen you in February in my library alone, over a cup of cold coffee, on the strength of 8 paragraphs of prose that no man of my education ought to have been too dull to recognize as the best thing he had read in a decade. The third is the shortest. I do not love you, Miss Whitmore. One cannot love a woman one has not met. But I have admired you for 15 months, and I have ridden 300 miles to stand in a parlor for the chance of meeting you. And I have been, since you walked through that parlor door this morning, in a state of disordered feeling, which I cannot at present name, but which I recognize even in its disorder as the beginning of something I am not willing to set down unlived. Do with all 3 as you will. I shall not speak of any of it again, unless you speak of it first. I am Miss Whitmore, your servant, in the fullest and most serious meaning of that word. S. Thornfield. Clara laid the letter flat on the table. She laid both her palms flat on top of it. She shut her eyes. Jesse put his head in at the common room door. "Miss, horses are saddled." "Jesse." "Miss." Give me 5 minutes. Yes, miss. He pulled the door to. Clara sat at the table in the tallow light, and her eyes were still shut, and her palms were still flat upon the letter, and she did not weep, because she had not wept all day, and she was not about to begin, for a man she had known 12 hours. But there was a sound in her throat, small and tight and private, that was not a weeping sound, and was not a laughing sound, and was something in between, and it shook her shoulders twice, and then it was done, and she opened her eyes. She folded the letter. She put it back inside her coat over her heart, where a woman carries a letter when she has not yet decided what it means to her. She stood up. She went out to the yard. Jessie? Miss? Ride? Yes, miss. They rode through the last of the summer dark, with the stars going thin in the east, and by 10 the next morning they were on the Baltimore Pike, and by Wednesday evening they were at the south gate of the city, and at 9:15 on Thursday morning, Clara Whitmore stood in front of the keeper's desk at the Baltimore debtor's jail, with Harlan Webb's letter of introduction in her hand, and a face scrubbed clean of 3 days' road dust, and a voice so steady, not even Jessie at her elbow heard it shake. My name is Clara Whitmore. Miss, I am here to see my father. Miss, the discharge is for noon. Mr. Whitmore is not to be released until noon by order of... I am not here to release him, sir. I am here to speak with him. The keeper looked at the letter. He looked at Clara. He looked at the letter again. Miss Whitmore, Mr. Thornfield's letter says you are to be admitted at any hour for any duration without attendance to the room of your father's choosing. It does say that, sir. It is a very unusual letter, miss. Mr. Thornfield is a very unusual man, sir. Will you admit me? I will admit you. Thank you, sir. The keeper rose. This way, miss. Clara followed him down a corridor that smelled of lye and old straw, and at the fourth door on the left, the keeper stopped, and he turned the key, and he opened the door, and he stepped aside. Mr. Whitmore, your daughter, sir. Clara walked in. Jonas Whitmore stood up from the narrow cot against the wall. He had grown thin. He had gone gray at the temples. His coat was mended at both elbows in a hand that was not his wife's. For a long, terrible moment, father and daughter stood and looked at one another across 6 feet of prison floor, and neither of them said a word. Then Jonas Whitmore's mouth opened, and the word that came out of it was not Clara, and it was not daughter, and it was not, forgive me. It was a name Clara had never heard in her life. Eleanor. Clara froze. Papa. Eleanor, is it? Papa. It is Clara. It is your Clara. Jonas Whitmore stared at her. His hand came up. It shook so badly he could not hold it still. He reached toward her face, and he did not quite touch her, and his eyes filled, and he said very softly, Clara, forgive an old man. You have her face. In this light, you have her face exactly. Papa, whose face? Jonas Whitmore sank back down onto the cot. He put his head in his hands, and Clara Whitmore, who had come 300 miles to hear the truth about a private promissory note and a mother's lie and a husband's debt, stood in the doorway of a Baltimore jail cell and understood slowly and coldly and all at once that the first truth her father was going to tell her had nothing to do with any of those things. Papa, who is Eleanor? Jonas Whitmore did not lift his head. Papa, answer me, he answered. Eleanor was my wife Clara. The cell went very quiet. Papa. She was my wife before your mother was my wife. Papa. She was your mother Clara. Clara did not move. She did not sit down. She did not reach for the wall. She did not breathe for a long count of seconds, and then she did breathe very carefully, the way a person breathes who has been told the floor she is standing on is not a floor. Papa, say that again. Eleanor Margaret Ashbury. I married her in the summer of 1794 in the parish church at Mechanicsville. She was a schoolmistress. She taught the children of the poor and the children of the free and the children of no one in a room behind the smithy, and I walked past that room every morning for a year before I found the courage to speak to her, and I married her 6 months from the day I did. She was your mother Clara. She bore you in the spring of '97, and she died of the childbed fever 9 days later, and she is buried in the Ashbury plot at Mechanicsville, and I have not set foot in that churchyard in 23 years because I could not bear to. Papa! Abigail was her cousin. Abigail was her cousin, Clara. Abigail came down from Baltimore to help nurse her. Abigail held you the night your mother died. Abigail stayed in my house for 6 months to keep you alive because I could not look at you without seeing Eleanor, and I could not feed you, and I could not rock you, and I could not do a single thing a father is required to do, and Abigail did all of it. And after 6 months, Abigail said to me at the kitchen table, "Jonas, this child needs a mother, and you need a wife. And I am here, and I shall not marry elsewhere at my age, and if you will have me, I shall have you, and we shall raise this girl together, and no one shall ever know she was not mine." Papa, I married her on the 1st of October 97. You were 5 months old. The other 3 came in their order after. And it was never Clara. It was never that she did not love you. She loved you. She loved you fiercer than a woman loves a child of her own because she had fought harder for you. But Eleanor was the wife I had chosen. Abigail was the wife I had accepted. And I think your mother knew that, Clara. I think Abigail has known that every day of 23 years. And I think it has cost her a thing a man cannot measure. Clara finally sat down. She sat on the floor of the cell, not on the cot, not on the stool on the floor, with her back against the doorframe and her riding cloak pulled around her knees. Papa, Clara, does she know I know now? No, child. Does anyone know? Lydia, Harriet, Joe. No one, Clara. Not a living soul in Richmond. Your mother's people in Baltimore know because they were at the funeral, but the Baltimore Ashburys died in the fever of '02, every last one, and there is no living person in this world but me and your mama Abigail who knows whose child you are. And Sebastian Thornfield. Jonas Whitmore lifted his head. What did you say? Sebastian Thornfield. Does he know? Clara. Papa. Does he? Jonas Whitmore was silent a long time. Clara. Papa? He has not asked me. That is not an answer, Papa. He has not asked me, Clara. But he sat on this cot for 4 hours 2 weeks ago, and he looked at the clipping on the wall, and he looked at me, and he said to me very quiet, Mr. Whitmore, the woman who wrote this piece has the same turn of mind as a woman. I read once in the Carolina Review in the winter of 1803 who signed herself E.A., and I said to him, Sir, that was her mother. And he said, I thought as much, sir. And he did not ask me another word about it, and he changed the subject to the weather in Virginia. Clara shut her eyes. Papa. Yes, child. He knew. He knew something, I cannot say what. He knew something before he ever rode to Richmond. Yes. He knew my mother was not my mother. He may have known that. He knew it, Papa. A man like that does not guess. Jonas Whitmore said nothing. Papa. Yes, child. Why is my mother buried in Mechanicsville under the name Ashbury? Because she wished it so. She told me when she was carrying you, Clara Jonas, if I do not live through this, bury me with my own people, and raise my child with a name that will not remind you of me every hour of your life. So I buried her at Mechanicsville under her maiden name, and I gave you my name. And I have paid for her stone to be kept clean for 23 years, and I have not once gone to see it, because I am a coward. Clara, and I have been a coward about this thing the whole of my life, and your mother Abigail has carried the weight of my cowardice on her back in silence. And that is why she did what she did these 3 years, and that is why she lied about my death, and that is why she was willing to sell any daughter in my house except you to the first man with gold enough to settle the notes. Because she knew, child. She knew that if it came down to it, Eleanor's daughter was the one she would not put on the block. Clara opened her eyes. Papa? Yes, child. She was willing to sell Josephine. I know. She was willing to sell Harriet. I know. My sisters, her own daughters. I know Clara. And she has come to that, Papa, because of the debts, because you were a fool. Yes. Say it, Papa, out loud, In your own voice. Say I was a fool." Jonas Whitmore lifted his head. His eyes were wet and very clear and very old. "I was a fool, Clara. I was a soft-hearted, vain, overextended fool, and I signed paper I could not pay on, and I did it for 7 years, while your mother begged me to stop, and I did not stop, and I am sitting in this cell because of it, and I have lost my daughters 3 years of their own father because of it, and I cannot give any of that back, and I shall spend the rest of my days trying, and I shall die trying, and it shall not be enough." Clara drew her knees up and put her forehead against them. She stayed that way for a long time. When she lifted her face, it was dry. "Papa." "Yes, child." "I am going to stand up." "Yes, child." "I am going to stand up, and I am going to walk out of this cell, and I am going to go and sit in the keeper's room until noon, and at noon I am going to walk back in here, and I am going to take your arm, and I am going to walk you out of this jail, and I am going to put you in Mr. Thornfield's carriage, and I am going to ride beside that carriage to Fredericksburg, and I am going to see you lodged at the Golden Plough, and I am going to write to Mama from the Plough with my own hand to tell her where you are, and I am going to ride from the Plough to Thornfield Reach, and I am going to sit down with Mr. Thornfield on Sunday morning, and I am going to ask him 2 questions, and then Papa, and not before, I am going to decide what kind of daughter I mean to be to you for whatever years are left between us. Clara, do not ask me anything, Papa. Not today. Today I only want you alive in the daylight. Tomorrow, Papa, and the day after, and the month after, we shall have the rest of the conversations we are owed. But today, Papa, today, we only walk out." Jonas Whitmore nodded. He could not speak. Clara stood up. She did not kiss her father. She did not embrace him. She walked out of the cell, and the keeper closed the door behind her, and she sat in the keeper's anteroom on a hard bench against the wall, and did not speak to a soul until the bell in the courtyard struck noon. At noon, she walked back in, and she took her father's arm, and she walked him out. Thornfield's carriage was at the gate. It was not an ostentatious carriage. It was plain dark wood with plain brass fittings, and a pair of good quiet horses, and the driver was a man Clara did not know, who touched his hat and said, "Miss Whitmore, Mr. Thornfield's compliments. He is not within, ma'am. He is at the Patterson house on Charles Street, and he asks that you call upon him there at your earliest convenience, and that you send word by his man, if you will not call, and he shall trouble you no further. He is in Baltimore. He rode in last night, ma'am." Clara stood at the carriage door with her father's hand in hers, and a wind coming up the street that smelled of the harbor, and she understood that Sebastian Thornfield had heard from Harlan Webb the whole of her message about Sunday, and he had gotten on a horse anyway, and he had ridden through Wednesday night to be at the jail gate at noon, in case she needed him, and he had not come in person to the gate, because she had told him not to, and he had lodged at the Patterson house to wait until she sent word. Driver: "Ma'am, my father is for Fredericksburg." "Yes, ma'am. I shall ride alongside as far as the second change. Then I shall turn back to Baltimore." "Yes, ma'am." "See him to the Golden Plough. Not a word to anyone on the road about his name. If any inn wants a name, give mine. Whitmore, Miss of Richmond. Papers if needed." "Yes, ma'am." She put her father inside the carriage. He tried to speak. "Papa, tomorrow." "Clara, tomorrow, Papa." She shut the carriage door. Jessie brought the horses. They rode south out of Baltimore in the hot noon sun, and at the second change of horses, 22 miles down the post road. Clara kissed her father once on the cheek through the carriage window, and she said, "Papa, you are going to be all right." And her father closed his eyes and wept, and Clara turned her horse. "Jessie." "Miss." "Back to Baltimore." "Yes, miss." They rode. It was past 7 of the evening when she dismounted at the Patterson house on Charles Street, and she was road-grimed to the shoulders, and her hair had come down at the back, and her hands were shaking from fatigue and from hunger, and from things she could not name, and she walked into the front hall of the hotel and asked in a voice that did not sound like her own for Mr. Sebastian Thornfield. The clerk did not ask her to wait. The clerk sent a boy. The boy came back in under a minute. Sebastian Thornfield was behind him. He was in his shirt sleeves. He had been reading. He had a finger still in the book to hold his place. and he stopped at the foot of the staircase when he saw her, and whatever he had been going to say, he did not say. "Miss Whitmore?" "Mr. Thornfield." "You are unwell." "I am tired, sir. I am not unwell." "Come into the parlor." "No, sir." "Miss Whitmore." "No, sir. Not the parlor. I shall not sit down in a parlor in a Baltimore hotel with you, Mr. Thornfield, at 7 of an evening, and neither shall you ask me to. I shall speak to you here, sir, in the front hall, in the sight of the clerk and of the boy, and of any Christian soul who cares to pass by, and I shall speak to you for 3 minutes, and then I shall ride to the boarding house on Fayette Street, where my driver has taken a room in my name, and I shall sleep for 1 night, and I shall meet you at the south gate of this city at 7 tomorrow morning, and we shall ride together to Thornfield Reach, and we shall not speak on the road of anything that has passed between us in any letter, and you, sir, shall not ask me a single question about my father. Do we understand one another, Mr. Thornfield?" Sebastian Thornfield set the book down upon the little side table beside the stair. He did not take a step toward her. "We understand one another, Miss Whitmore." "Good. May I ask one thing?" "One, sir." "Is he alive?" "He is alive." "Is he whole?" "That is 2 things, sir." "Forgive me. He is whole." Sebastian Thornfield closed his eyes for the space of 1 breath. When he opened them, he said very quietly, "Thank you, Miss Whitmore." "Sir." "Thank you." Clara did not know what to do with that. She said, "Good night, Mr. Thornfield." And she turned, and she walked out of the hotel, and she got back on the horse, and she rode to Fayette Street, and she ate 3 bites of bread, and she drank half a cup of water, and she slept for 11 hours in her clothes. And at 7 the next morning, she was at the south gate of the city with Jessie at her elbow, and Sebastian Thornfield was there, and he was on a gray gelding with a dark mane, and he touched his hat to her, and he did not speak, and they rode. They rode 3 days. For 3 days they did not speak of the letter. They did not speak of Eleanor Ashbury. They did not speak of the Carolina Review. They did not speak of the parlor at Whitmore Hall, or the cell in Baltimore, or the noon release, or the golden plow at Fredericksburg, or the gray mare Josephine had taken, or the iron bracelets on Caleb Prescott's wrists, or the letter Clara had carried 300 miles over her heart. They spoke of the weather. They spoke of the crops in the fields they passed. They spoke of Jessie's horse which had thrown a shoe at the second inn, and of the blacksmith at Wilmington, who was a good one, and of the 2 girls at the boarding house at Havre de Grace, who had given them cold chicken for the road. They spoke of nothing, and by the 3rd evening, riding in the long gold light down the turnpike toward the gates of Thornfield Reach, Clara understood that she had never in her life been more listened to than she had been by this man in 3 days of absolute silence on every subject that mattered. They came to the gates at 6:30 on Sunday evening. Sebastian Thornfield reined in. "Miss Whitmore?" "Mr. Thornfield." "I promised you I should not speak of the letter unless you spoke of it first." "You did, sir." "I shall keep that promise, Miss Whitmore. I shall keep it at this gate, and I shall keep it in the drawing room, and I shall keep it at the supper table, and I shall keep it for the whole of my natural life if that is what you require of me." "Sir." "I ask only one thing." "Sir." "That you come through this gate." Clara looked at the gate. It was open. It was a plain iron gate between 2 plain stone posts, and beyond it was a drive, and beyond the drive was the house. "Mr. Thornfield." "Miss Whitmore." "I shall come through the gate." "Thank you, Miss Whitmore." "Sir." "Yes." "I said in the parlor of my mother's house that I had 2 questions I meant to ask you. I have decided I shall ask them at the gate and not at the house, because if I do not like your answers, I should rather not have ridden up your drive." "Ask them, Miss Whitmore." The first. "My father told me you sat with him 4 hours in the Baltimore jail, and that you looked at a clipping on the wall of his cell, and that you said the piece had the same turn of mind as a piece by a woman who signed herself E.A. in the Carolina Review of the winter of 1803. "I said that, Miss Whitmore." "You read that piece?" "I did." "At the age of what, Mr. Thornfield?" 17. "You remember a piece of prose you read at 17. "I remember that one, Miss Whitmore." Why? Because my mother was dying when I read it. Because the piece concerned a woman who was dying and what she wished for her daughter. Because I had no sister, and my mother had no daughter. And I read that piece aloud to my mother the night before she died, and she said to me, "Sebastian, whoever wrote this has the heart of a schoolmistress and the mind of a senator. And if you ever meet her daughter, you will know her by the same two things." And she was gone before the sun rose. I was 17 years old. Miss Whitmore and I have been looking for a woman with the heart of a schoolmistress and the mind of a senator for 21 years. I did not know I was looking until February of last year, when I opened the Carolina Review in my own library and read 8 paragraphs by a young woman in Richmond. And I thought, that is the voice, and I thought she is the daughter, and I thought, and I should not in 1,000 years have found her if my mother had not told me where to look. Clara sat on her horse at the open gate of Thornfield Reach in the long gold light of a Sunday evening, and the second question she had meant to ask went out of her head entirely. Sebastian Thornfield waited. He did not press her for it. He did not look at her even. He looked at his horse's ears. At last Clara said very slowly, "Mr. Thornfield." "Miss Whitmore." "My second question was whether you had ever loved a woman before me." "Ah, I shall not ask it." "Miss Whitmore." "I shall not ask it, sir, because I have just now understood that the answer was in your first answer, and you have given it, and I do not require it twice." Sebastian Thornfield did not speak. Clara turned her horse. She rode through the gate. Jessie followed. Sebastian Thornfield came through last, and he closed the gate behind them with his own hand, and they rode up the long drive toward the house, and the sun was going down behind the hills of Virginia, and in the high window of the west wing of Thornfield Reach, a single candle came on, and then another, as the household made ready for the woman who had come at last. At the foot of the front steps, a maid in a plain gray dress came out with a lantern, and she dropped a small curtsy, and she said, "Miss Whitmore, there is a gentleman in the small parlor who has been waiting since 3 of the afternoon, ma'am. He says his name is Dr. Elias Rutledge of Philadelphia, and he says, ma'am, that his wife is in the kitchen, and that his wife's name is Josephine, and that his wife, ma'am, has been weeping since noon, and that she will not tell him why, and she asks, ma'am, only for you." Clara's hand froze on the pommel of her saddle. She looked at Sebastian Thornfield. Sebastian Thornfield was already dismounting. "Miss Whitmore, go to your sister." "Sir." "Go." Clara swung down off her horse and was up the steps before the maid could take the reins, and she was through the front door and down the passage, and in the kitchen of Thornfield Reach, before her riding gloves had hit the floor. And Josephine Whitmore Rutledge, married 1 week on the steps of the Philadelphia courthouse, was in her sister's arms, before Clara had time to ask the first question, and the first words out of Josephine's mouth were not of Elias, and not of Philadelphia, and not of the mare on the road. The first words were, "Clara, Mama is dead." Clara did not let go of her sister. "Joe, say that again." "Mama is dead, Clara." "Joe, 3 days ago, Wednesday, in her chair in the morning room with Harriet at her feet." "Joe, how?" "Her heart, Clara. Her heart." Dr. Pemberton said it had been failing for 2 years. He said she had known. He said she had come to him last winter, and he had told her the plain truth, and she had asked him not to tell us, and he had not told us. He said, Clara, he said she had been writing letters for 18 months, to each of us, to be opened only after. "Joe, where is Harriet?" "Harriet is in the small parlor, Clara. Harriet rode here with me from Fredericksburg. Harriet has the letters." Harriet rode. Harriet rode Clara. Harriet rode out of Whitmore Hall on the day Mama died with the letters in her saddlebag, and she rode to the Golden Plough, and she found Papa, and she rode from the plough to here, and she has been on a horse for 2.5 days, and she has not slept, Clara, and she will not weep, and she will not eat, and she will not let go of the bag. Where is Papa? Papa is at the plough. Papa cannot ride yet, Clara. Papa cried for half a day when Harriet told him, and he could not sit up at the end of it, and the innkeeper has put him to bed, and Lydia is on her way to him with a hired carriage. Lydia is the one Mama left in charge of the body, Clara. Lydia did all of it. The doctor, the women, the stone. Lydia. Of course, Lydia. Yes. Clara took her sister's face in both her hands. "Joe, you came here." "I came here because Mama's letter to me said to come here, Clara." "What?" "Mama's letter to me said, Josephine, when you have read this, ride to Thornfield Reach and find Clara, and put your sister Harriet's hand in hers, and do not leave them until they have spoken every word." "Mama wrote that." "Mama wrote that, Clara." Clara let go of her sister. She walked out of the kitchen of Thornfield Reach and down the passage and to the door of the small parlor, and she opened the door without knocking. Harriet was in a chair by the cold hearth. Her riding boots were caked to the ankle. Her hair was in a single rough plait down her back. The saddlebag was on the floor at her feet. Her eyes were open and dry, and she did not turn her head when the door opened. "Harriet." "Clara." "Harriet. Sister." "Clara, do not come over here yet." "Harriet." "Stay where you are. There is a letter in this bag for you, and there is a letter in this bag for me, and Mama wrote on the outside of mine that I was to read mine first, and I have not yet read mine, and I will not read it with you in the room until I have asked you for one thing." "Ask Harriet." "I told you in the garden that I hated you." "You did. I have ridden 2.5 days. Clara and I have not slept, and I have looked at Papa's face in a bed at the plow, and I have looked at my own face in the glass at the inn at Hanover, and I have understood, Clara, that I did not hate you. I hated being the one who was never chosen, and I put your face on it because your face was the one in the parlor that morning. I am asking your pardon for it, Clara. I am asking it now before I read what Mama wrote me, because I will not read what Mama wrote me with that on my conscience for 1 minute longer." Clara's throat closed. "Harriet." "Say you forgive me, Clara, and I shall read." "There is nothing to forgive." "Say it anyway, sister. Say it because I have asked." "I forgive you, Harriet." Harriet broke. She broke the way a person breaks who has not broken in 3 days, all at once in a single great sob that shook the chair. And Clara was across the room before the sob had finished, and she was on the floor at her sister's knees, with her arms around her sister's waist, and Harriet's hands were in her hair, and the two of them stayed that way for a long time without speaking, and when at last Harriet drew back, she opened the saddlebag, and she took out the 4 letters. "Clara, mine first. Yours first, Harriet." Harriet broke the seal. She read in silence, and her face did things Clara had never seen her face do, and at the last line she pressed the paper to her chest, and she said very softly, "Oh, Mama." "Harriet." "Clara, read yours." Clara took the letter with her name on it. She broke the seal. "My Clara, by the time you read this, I shall be where I cannot lie to you any longer, and I am glad of it, child, because I have lied to you for 23 years, and the lie has been the long heaviness of my whole life, and I have not had the courage to set it down while I still drew breath. Eleanor Ashbury was your mother. I was your mother's cousin. I came to your father's house to nurse her, and she died in my arms, and you were 9 days old, and I held you, and I could not put you down. I have not put you down since, Clara. I have been a poor mother to you in 1,000 small ways, and a fierce one in 1,000 more, and I have favored you in my heart over my own 3 living daughters every day of your life, and I have hidden it because I was ashamed of it, and I have been cruel to your sisters because I was ashamed of it, and Lydia has known, and Lydia has been my deputy in the cruelty without ever asking me why. And I owe Lydia an apology I shall not now be able to make. You are to make it for me, Clara. You are to take Lydia's hand, and you are to tell her that her mother loved her child, and that her mother knew Lydia carried this house on her back for 3 years, while her mother was hiding from a Baltimore jail. And you are to tell her that her mother was proud of her every day, and could not say so, because saying so would have been a confession. And confession was the thing your mother could not make. You are to tell Harriet that Harriet was the bravest of my 4 daughters, and that I knew it and that I did not say it because I knew if I said it once, Harriet would believe me, and I had no right to give her a thing that should have come from a husband or a son or a friend. You are to tell Josephine that Josephine was my joy, and that the doctor I never told her of the one I knew about for 6 months before this letter was written. That was the only news in my last winter that made me smile, and I did not stop her going, because I would not have stopped her going. And you are to tell yourself, Clara, that the woman who bore you would have been proud of you in a way that I, who only raised you, was never quite permitted to be by my own conscience. Eleanor's voice is in your throat, child. I have heard it for 23 years. The piece you wrote in the Carolina Review last August about the apprentice law I cut from the paper with my own scissors, and I keep it in the locket at my collar, and you may have the locket when I am gone. Do not weep for me long, Clara. I have been weeping for myself for 23 years, and it has done no good. Find a man who will not lie to you, child, and do not lie to him, and raise your daughters to know whose daughters they are. Your loving Mama Abigail. Clara read it through once. She read it through twice. She did not weep. She folded the letter very carefully, and she put it inside her writing coat over the letter from Sebastian Thornfield, where 2 letters now sat over her heart, and she stood up and she said, Harriet. Clara, we are going to go to the kitchen. We are going to sit Josephine down between us. We are going to read out, all 3 of us, the bits of our letters that are meant for the other to hear. And then, Harriet, I am going to ride to the plow at first light and bring Papa home. Will you ride with me? I will ride with you, Clara. Good. Clara. Yes, Harriet. There is one more letter in the bag. Lydia's. No, Clara. Clara looked. The 4th letter in Harriet's lap did not have Lydia's name on it. It had Sebastian's. Mama wrote to him. Mama wrote to him, Clara. The letter was on her desk the morning she died. Lydia gave it to me. Lydia said, Harriet, you take this to Thornfield Reach, and you put it into the man's own hand because Mama wrote it for him, and Mama died with the seal on it. Harriet. Yes, Clara. I am going to give him that letter myself. Yes, Clara. And you are going to sit with Josephine and Elias in the kitchen, and you are going to eat the bread on the table, and you are going to drink whatever Mr. Thornfield's housekeeper puts in front of you, and you are going to sleep tonight in a bed in a room in this house, and tomorrow we ride. Yes, Clara. Clara took the letter for Sebastian Thornfield in her hand, and she walked out of the small parlor, and she walked back down the passage, and Sebastian Thornfield was in the front hall, with his hat still in his hand, and the dust of 3 days' road still on his coat, and he had not gone upstairs, and he had not eaten, and he had not even sat down. Mr. Thornfield. Miss Whitmore. My mother is dead. He closed his eyes. Miss Whitmore. She died Wednesday morning, sir, in Richmond, of a heart that had been failing 2 years, and that she did not tell us was failing. She wrote letters before she went. I have read mine. My sister Harriet rode to the plow to my father, and from the plow to here to me, and she has brought 1 letter, sir, that I am to deliver. She held it out. This was on her desk, sir, the morning she died. She wrote it to you. Sebastian Thornfield took the letter. He did not open it at once. Miss Whitmore, will you sit while I read? I will stand, sir. Will you stand close enough that I may read it aloud to you if I find I cannot read it alone? I will stand that close, sir. He broke the seal. He read. He read for less than a minute, because the letter was short. When he finished, he did not look up. He held the paper in both hands at his waist, and he stood very still, and Clara watched the side of his face, and counted her own heartbeats, and she got to 17 before he spoke. Miss Whitmore. Sir? Your mother has written me 4 lines. Sir. She has written me 4 lines, and I shall read them to you because she has instructed me to. Read them, sir. Sebastian Thornfield read. Mr. Thornfield. I do not know you, sir, but my Clara has written of you in her face since the afternoon you left my parlor, and she does not know she has done it, and I, who have read her face for 23 years, do. She is Eleanor Ashbury's daughter. She is not my own. The whole story is in the letter she will be opening at much the same hour as you are opening this one. Do not, sir, ride after her with this letter in your hand. Wait until she has spoken first. She will speak first, sir, if you give her the room to. She always has. She always will. Yours in what little time is left to me, Abigail Whitmore. Sebastian Thornfield laid the letter against his coat. Miss Whitmore. Sir. Speak first, then. Clara stood in the front hall of Thornfield Reach with one hand at her side and the other one closed around the corner of her riding cloak, and she said in a voice that was steadier than she had imagined it could be, "Mr. Thornfield, I do not love you. We have known one another 12 days. I cannot love a man in 12 days, sir, and I should think less of myself if I could. But I have read your letter 11 times since the inn at Ashland, and I have not read any other letter 11 times in my life, and I have ridden 3 days at your shoulder in absolute silence. And I have not been alone for 1 minute of those 3 days, and I do not know what that is, sir. But I know it is not nothing, and I should like, sir, to find out what it is, and I should like to find it out across a dinner table in your house, and across the breakfast table the morning after, and across 40 years of mornings, if 40 years is what we are given. I shall not marry you next week, sir. I shall not marry you next month. I shall come to Thornfield Reach as your guest, and you shall come to Whitmore Hall as my father's, and we shall write one another letters in the weeks between, and at the end of 1 year, sir. If we are still of the same mind, I shall marry you in the parish church at Mechanicsville, where my mother is buried, and not before, and not anywhere else. Those are my terms, sir. I shall not lower them." Sebastian Thornfield did not move for a long moment. Then he took one step toward her. He did not take her hand. He stopped at arm's length, and he said in a voice that was so quiet, Clara had to lean a half-inch toward him to catch it. "Miss Whitmore, I accept your terms, all of them, without amendment. I shall write you a letter every Sunday, and I shall come to Whitmore Hall on the first weekend of every month, and I shall bring no gift but the conversation I have stored up since the last visit, and I shall not press you for an answer at any time before the year is out. And at the year's end, Miss Whitmore, if you stand with me on the steps of the church at Mechanicsville, I shall be the most fortunate man in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And if you do not stand with me, I shall ride home and write you on the Sunday after, because the writing, Miss Whitmore, is not contingent on the standing. The writing is its own thing. The writing I should do whether you married me or not. Sir?" "Yes, Miss Whitmore." "You may write the writing." "Thank you, Miss Whitmore." "Sir?" "Yes." "I am very tired." "I know, Miss Whitmore." "I am going to sit with my sisters in your kitchen for 1 hour, and then I am going to sleep in whatever bed your housekeeper has made up. And at first light, I am going to ride to my father at the plow, and you are not to ride with me. I shall not ride with you. You are to come to my mother's funeral on Friday at the parish church in Richmond. I shall come. You are to stand at the back, sir, and you are not to come forward, and you are not to speak until I have spoken to you first, because my sister Harriet has not yet met you with her eyes open, and I shall not have her meet you across the open grave of her mother. I shall stand at the back. Good. Miss Whitmore." "Sir?" "One thing. One, sir. At the funeral, when you have spoken to me first, I should like to be presented to your sister Harriet, and I should like to take her hand, and I should like to tell her in your hearing that on the morning I came to your mother's parlor, she was the first of the 4 faces that I looked at, and that I should like, if she will permit me, to speak with her alone for a quarter of an hour at some point in the months ahead, because I owe her a thing I cannot owe her in a public room, and I should rather owe it to her face." Clara looked at him. "Mr. Thornfield?" "Yes." "You are a better man than I gave you credit for in my mother's parlor." "Miss Whitmore, I was not that morning. I have become one in the days since on account of you. Do not credit me with what I have not yet earned in full." "Sir?" "Yes." "Good night, Mr. Thornfield." "Good night, Miss Whitmore." Clara went into the kitchen. Her sisters were at the long table. Elias Rutledge stood up when she came in, and Clara held out her hand to her brother-in-law without speaking, and he shook it, and he did not let go, and he said, "Clara," and Clara said, "Elias," and that was the whole of their introduction, and it was enough. They sat at the table, all 4 of them, with Elias quiet at Josephine's elbow, and they read aloud to one another the parts of the 4 letters that were meant for the others to hear, and they laughed once at a thing Mama had written about Lydia and the lavender water, and they wept twice. And at the end of it Harriet said, "Lydia is on the road. Lydia should not be alone in this for 1 more day." And Clara said, "Then ride to her at first light with me, Harriet, and we shall find her on the post road, and we shall bring her to Papa together." and Harriet nodded and put her head down on the table and slept where she sat. They buried Abigail Whitmore on Friday morning at the parish church in Richmond, in the plot beside the empty one she had once intended for Jonas. Jonas Whitmore stood at the head of the grave with his 4 daughters around him, and he wept openly. And he held Lydia's hand on the one side and Harriet's hand on the other. And Josephine and Clara stood in front of him with their arms around each other, and at the back of the churchyard, in a plain dark coat, Sebastian Thornfield stood with his hat in his hand and did not come forward. When the last spadeful had fallen, Clara crossed the grass and she said, "Mr. Thornfield, may I present my sister Harriet?" Harriet held out her hand. Sebastian Thornfield took it. He bowed. He spoke the words he had told Clara he would speak, and he spoke them quietly, and Harriet listened. And when he had finished, Harriet said, "Mr. Thornfield, I shall hear you at Whitmore Hall in the autumn." "Not before. I am obliged to you, sir, for what you have said today. It will not undo what I felt that morning, but it begins to. Miss Harriet, that is all I asked. Good day, sir." "Good day, Miss Harriet." He rode home to Thornfield Reach that afternoon. He wrote to Clara on Sunday. He wrote on every Sunday for the next 51 Sundays. Jonas Whitmore came home to Whitmore Hall on the 2nd of August. He never again left the county of Richmond. He took Clara to the churchyard at Mechanicsville on the first Sunday in September, and he stood with her at Eleanor Ashbury's stone, and he wept for the second time in his daughter's hearing. And Clara did not weep because she had used her last tears for Mama Abigail. And she had learned in the month since that she was a woman who carried 2 mothers in her chest now and need give up neither. Lydia kept the house. Harriet in the autumn met Sebastian Thornfield in the front parlor of Whitmore Hall. For the quarter of an hour he had asked of her, and at the end of it she walked him to the door and she said, "Mr. Thornfield, you may marry my sister with my blessing." And in the spring she met a quiet schoolmaster from Petersburg at a friend's wedding, and within the year she was wed to him. And within 2, she was the mother of a small, fierce girl named Abigail, and Harriet Whitmore Carlyle was for the rest of her life the sister Clara wrote to first when news came good or ill. Josephine and Elias stayed in Philadelphia. They had 3 sons in 5 years. Clara was godmother to the eldest. The Paulson Orphanage on Franklin Street received in the September after Clara's wedding a deed of gift in the amount of $4,000 from a private donor who declined to be named. Miss Prudence Abernathy read the deed twice and looked at Clara across the kitchen table and said, "Is this your husband, Clara?" And Clara said, "It is Miss Prudence." And Miss Prudence said, "I shall thank him in my prayers, and not in a letter then, since he has asked it." And she did. Clara Whitmore married Sebastian Thornfield on the first Sunday of June 1816 in the parish church at Mechanicsville, with her father at her side, and her 3 sisters in the front pew, and Miss Prudence Abernathy, and 7 children from the Paulson Orphanage in the second. And the church was filled with the people who had loved her without lying to her. And there were no others present. She wrote for the rest of her life under her own name. She wrote 41 pieces in the Carolina Review and 11 in the National Intelligencer, and 1 long pamphlet on the apprentice laws of Virginia that was read aloud in the legislature of the Commonwealth in the spring of 1822. And 3 of those laws were changed, and 4 orphanages in 3 counties were opened on the model of the Paulson home, and at the foot of every piece of writing she ever published, there appeared in plain type the name Clara Ashbury Thornfield. She had taken the name Ashbury at her wedding in addition to her father's name and her husband's, because Sebastian Thornfield had risen at the breakfast table on the morning of their wedding, and he had said in front of her father and her 3 sisters, "Clara, your mother gave you a voice and a name, and you shall carry both into my house, and our daughters shall carry them after you, and I shall be proud of it every day of my life." She lived to be 79. She was buried beside her husband in the churchyard at Mechanicsville, 3 rows over from her mother Eleanor, and on her stone beneath her 3 names and her dates were carved the words she had asked for in her will. 8 words that summed the whole of the life she had built out of a parlor in Richmond on a summer morning in 1815, when a stranger had ridden up the drive and said, "Any of your daughters will do." She had walked in late. She had refused him, and in refusing him, she had at last chosen herself.